Hey guys and girls, that was my introductory video of what I've been doing for the last 11 months. Well, I've kind of had a few things going on, but that has been a focus of mine. 2020 will be defined for me as my year of flight, my first year of flying a paramotor. Definitely not for COVID-19. So hopefully you guys are able to find something positive from this last year to define it as, because looking forward to this all being over with, as I'm sure you are. Now I watched those clips of me flying, and I've got hours and hours of video from the chase cam to my helmet cam, and it's hard sometimes to believe that's actually me flying that paramotor. This whole year has been a little bit of a blur with just all the experience and how quickly my skills have improved and my confidence has improved, that I look at those videos and it's like, wow. I feel so grateful and appreciative that I get to do something like that, and I put in the time and the effort to build my skills up to where I can do something like that. Now I will be honest with you, there's been some challenging times through all of this, but that's part of the process, and I have no regrets, and I wouldn't change a thing, to be honest. This journey has been so amazing. And I know some of you are interested in learning how to fly paramotor. Some of you have been doing this for a while. We all kind of get into it for different reasons. The best advice I can give you is based off of my poor self-advice, which was maybe next year, maybe next year, maybe next year. It was probably 10 or 11 years ago that I first was introduced to this sport. And it was a friend of mine, we were out skiing, and he said, hey, we should get into paramotor piloting. We should fly these things. And he showed me a video, and I thought, that is amazing. We both went out and bought that paramotor Bible. So much good information in there. I've watched video after video of it, and I just kept putting it off. Life kind of got in the way, which it does for so many things. If I would have started this 10 years ago, I can't imagine where my skills would be at now. So things happen for a reason though, and it was put off. And finally I was at a time where I could take on this challenge, and I have no regrets at all. Now some of you might be getting into this because it looks interesting. Maybe you want to add it to your pile of other hobbies, which is kind of what I did in some way. The thing I will tell you about flying something like this is it is not only a cool experience, and a lot of the things you can do are just fun. You know, you feel the G-forces, you fly up high, you fly down low. One of the things I like to tell people about the difference between this and other hobbies I have, especially compared to motorcycling, which I've always enjoyed. I've been doing since I was 13 years old. So a motorcycle is great. You can carve into turns, you can accelerate, decelerate quickly, you can do a lot of things on a motorcycle. What you can't do is leave the road. Obviously, if you have a dirt bike, maybe you can leave the road, but you know what I mean. You're subjected to the path that's in front of you, the options that are in front of you. When you're flying a paramotor, you don't have those rules. Outside of certain airspace you can't fly in, you can go up, down, left, right. If I want to go down by those trees, I'll go down there. There doesn't have to be a road that dictates where I can and can't go. So it opens up this door to freedom that you've never really experienced. And I didn't even take that into consideration when I got into the sport. It wasn't until after a few flights that I realized how my direction is purely defined by where I want to go, not by what's allowed. It's pretty amazing. So basically what I'm saying is we all have a reason for getting into this. And my advice is to not put it off. My advice is to, once you do it, once you learn the skill, don't be discouraged early on, because you're going to have your hurdles. You're going to have your mistakes. And I'm going to talk about mine here shortly. But those hurdles, those mistakes, that confidence demolisher, you know, from breaking a piece of equipment or damaging your wing or just not being able to get off the ground. Whatever it is, those things are the building blocks to just this level of confidence and appreciation for what we're able to do. In the end, our goal is the same. We want to be safe and we want to enjoy the sport. And the training I went through with Aviator was, I couldn't have asked for more, to be honest. Not only were the people amazing to work with, but the way they taught, the balance between classroom and actually getting out in the field and doing hands-on, it was perfect. I left that being prepared to move on to the next stage. And I want to talk a little bit about that. There's 2 stages to training, and that first one is the class, that investment of time. Now the cool thing is I had set this up, I think it was 7 or 8 months prior. Aviator had the option of doing payment by, I think it was the week, do weekly payments up until the day of your training. Then when you get there, it's all paid for. That was a great way to do it, a great way to, it's still the same amount of money, but it doesn't hurt as much when you plan ahead and prepay for it. So that's the first stage, is just getting to that classroom. And that's an investment in time and, of course, time away from your family and just the process of learning. It's hard on the body a little bit. You're up early, you're working hard, you're learning a lot of information, but in the end, the reward, it's well worth all of that. Now my training was 13 days. I spent 13 days in Denellen, Florida, at the airport, living out of my camper, doing the training, early mornings, doing all the things they asked of me. I believe I had 16 to 18 flights in. Now, keep in mind those flights are very controlled. You've got a headset on, they can communicate with you. You're basically getting off the ground in a huge open field. So much space to work with. You have no concerns of hazards or obstacles when you're leaving the ground and coming back in to land. Excellent place to train at. So anyway, 16, 18 flights of controlled flights. I get off the ground, they're walking me through, okay, Adam, make a left turn. I'm gonna make another left turn. I'm gonna make another left turn, and then you're gonna come in for a landing. And they let you know when to let off the throttle, when to start applying the brakes. They walk you through the entire process. Now toward the end, you start being able to do some of those things on your own. But the reality is, it's a controlled setting. That's the first stage of training. Now a big confidence booster for me, to be honest, was one of the instructors asking me if I might consider becoming an instructor at some point. So knowing that my skills were progressing on par, probably, for that training course, and with my education background, they saw some value, that maybe I can provide value to other new pilots. So at that stage, I definitely wasn't ready. I wouldn't feel comfortable teaching somebody to do something unless I felt very confident in my own skills. But that was the idea, is put that thought in my mind, so at some point maybe I can return as an instructor, part-time, full-time, whatever the case. But anyway, that was a big boost for me, knowing that, hey, this could be something I might get into long-term. That pushed me to not just be competent in the sport, but be proficient and be a leader in the sport where I can actually provide some of those skills to other people. So, leaving the training, I was driving back to Tennessee. Big smile on my face. I got my paramotor in my camper. My wing is being shipped to me. I'm like ready to go. I'm so excited. And I get home and I recognize that this is a 2-part training, right? The first one is training in Denellen. The second part is I get home and it's time to work. As soon as I get my wing, the first thing I do is I pull my wing out and I get out to a field and I start kiting. And I'm trying to learn how that wing works. Now, first of all, we trained on the Mojo wings, which is a beginner wing, during the training. Because I had a feeling my skills would improve enough to upgrade to another wing, I started with the Spider. Now the Spider is still a very safe wing. It's a B-rated wing. I think one of the only reasons it's B-rated is the speed of the wing. But it also comes with tip steering. Just a few more features that would probably have been my next progression to a wing, so I might as well start with that. But because it was a new wing, I had to start out with it, kiting it and making sure that I was comfortable. Now kiting is really fun once you get the technique down, but it can be very discouraging when you're learning how to do it. So getting this new wing out and recognizing the winds are not as amazing as they are down in Florida, where they're just a nice, even, straight line wind. The winds in Tennessee are all over the place. So I'd get the wing up and all of a sudden it's dancing left and right. Now the benefit to that was it taught me better control of the wing, to be able to anticipate some of those changes in wind before it dramatically affects the wind. You can start to feel some of those minor inputs and then respond to them. So that part of the training began very quickly for me. Then I got the motor on my back. Now, one of the things I did early on was just understanding the thrust of that motor, and I would put it on my back and I'd lean back and I'd be walking around my property, just getting comfortable with that motor, the weight, the feel of the throttle. And it was pretty impressive. It was a good boost for me to take that on, knowing that understanding the motor, understanding the wing, and then I connect those two again, basically what we did in the training, was going to really help me. Now, one of the things that was important for me was safety. I've got 2 kids. I don't want to leave them fatherless. So I went to the airport and I talked with the airport manager, and they said that it was perfectly fine to fly from there. And keep in mind, I hadn't flown for probably 3 weeks since I'd left the training. And the weather wasn't ideal. It was very cold in the mornings. But I got out to the airport and I strapped up. I went through the whole process just like they taught us in class. I went through all the checks of the motor, checks of the wing. I got the wing laid out real pretty. Everything set up nice. Now I had gloves on and a hat on because it was a little bit chilly out. But I wanted to do this right the first time. And keep that in mind when you move on to the next stage of solo training. That first flight can really make a huge difference. So don't skimp. Make sure the winds are good. Make sure the day itself is ideal. The conditions as far as what you're flying around is ideal. No obstacles, wide open space. Set yourself up for success. And that's what I did. I laid it out perfect. I went attention to detail. I checked every line perfect, laid it out, was very patient. Once I got set up, I looked back, I checked the wind again, and I got that wing up. Gave it some throttle, and I was up in the air. Now, I will tell you what, that first flight was, my heart was beating fast when I got in the air. I'm like, hey, where's Chris? Chris isn't there to talk me through this anymore. That was my instructor at Aviator for my first flight. And you learn very quickly that it's on you. You know what to do. Get up high, fly around a little bit, get comfortable, plan my landing. I did this over and over again. I would go up, make a circle, land, go up, make a circle, land. Then I'd widen out a little bit, come in and land. So you slowly start building those skills up. The comfort that comes with that is slow. I will be honest. I didn't really feel confident in what I was doing until probably the 4th or the 5th month of flying. Slowly building that confidence up. Now, my training, personal training, did not go without flaws. Okay, I think it was my 3rd or 4th flight. I had bought one of those little mirrors that you can hook to your cage so I can see my fuel level. Okay, and I was all excited to have this because I never really knew how much fuel I had. Even though I was up in the air for 20 minutes, I could have gone for an hour and 20 minutes. I'm always hesitant about that. So I hooked that little mirror up, but I mounted it too high on the cage. So what happened is I took off and 2 of my lines got looped underneath that. I was still able to get off the ground, but my wing was pulling heavily to the left. I basically got in the air and started going to the left. And I thought maybe the winds had taken me at first. I looked over, I saw those lines, and I tell you what, my heart rate shot up. First of all, I'm right over the hangars at the airport. At this point, I'm probably 40 feet above them. I didn't really know what my options were. I tried to reach back, but I couldn't reach back far enough to get those lines loose. Plus, I was worried if I loosened them and they just snapped up, would that be a good or a bad thing? I wasn't really sure. So the first thing I did is just let the glider do its thing. It was inflated, it was keeping me up, it was just turning me in a very sharp turn to the left. So the first thing I did is I started applying a little bit of pressure with the brake on the right. Could I compensate that turn with enough brake to keep myself straight? After the second loop, I realized how much pressure it took to keep the glider straight, level. Now, you have to also keep in mind I didn't want to stall out. So fortunately, it was just enough pressure to keep it straight. Now I was able to plan it out and come in for a landing. But trying to come in for a landing using one toggle, it was just a little bit tricky. So I looped around again. Finally, I had enough space where I could come in for a nice landing, give it enough brake, grab the other brake, and I got on the ground okay. Unhooked it, took that mirror. I think I just busted the whole thing off because I thought I'm never putting this thing on my paramotor again. Got everything set up again and took off for another flight. I did not want to leave the airport discouraged over what just happened. I needed to get over that hurdle. We've all heard the saying, get it back on the horse. I needed to get back on that paramotor and fly and have a successful flight before I went home. Now that wasn't my last mistake. The next one actually ended up costing me some money. Well, I guess that one did too, because I lost $12 for that little mirror. But the next one was me trying to get off the ground at my home. Now I bought this land, I got 12 acres, and I bought it with this dream of being able to take off from right in my front yard, basically going down the yard and flying up into the sky. I imagined that so many times when I was building this home, and I was excited. I wanted to do it. Because I had successfully done so many flights, I really hadn't had much for a botched flight. I felt very confident, like, all right, I can do this. I'm just going to go through the steps. What I realized is that I could get off the ground successfully, but I didn't have good wing control once I got the wing pulled up. I just went through the steps, and I didn't really run into a situation where I had to control the wing. I didn't have any gusts of wind that blew it or change in wind direction where it twisted me around too much. So once I got the wing off the ground, what had happened is I accelerated a little bit fast. So I felt like I was running really fast. I couldn't keep my balance. So I let off the gas, but I didn't apply the brakes. When I let off the gas, the wing was still, hey, the wing was ready to launch. Went in front of me, ended up pulling me forward. I came down, prop busted, damaged my netting, some cage issues, and it ended up costing me probably about $450 to fix what needed to be fixed. I'm laying there on the ground, scraped up knee, scraped up confidence, and the first thing I thought was, I need to get on the computer and order these replacement parts. So I got everything put away, put up, figured out what I needed, got on the computer, ordered them. I was not going to let this discourage me, okay? And that's one of the processes we have to go through with this sport. And I admit that I will sometimes push things a little bit too quickly. And that's probably what I did. Well, obviously, that is what I did there. But I've been known to do that in other areas too. So it reminded me that I need to get back to the airport. I have a lot of skills to build up before I can successfully launch from this location. That's part of the process. I've got a good friend of mine who took the class with me, and he's just made really good decisions all the way through. He's made sure he found a good spot. He flies during safe weather. He's slowly building his skills up, probably at the pace that we should all be doing it. I unfortunately have to be stubborn sometimes and learn things the hard way. So where am I at now with this training? My confidence is pretty good. I did have a minor little crash, no big issue, but I was flying one day and I was coming in really low in this field, and they had cut the field down, so it was just dirt on the ground now. And as I'm coming in, I came in a little bit low. Now, one of the downfalls of flying in Tennessee is to find a flat field somewhere is almost impossible. Everything's at some type of an incline or decline, or there's rolling hills. So I come into this one field that I've flown at a few times, and I'm coming in for a low touch, and I got a little bit too low, and I throttled up, and my prop hit like a corn stalk that had maybe been cut, so it was maybe a few inches off the ground, and it just went brrrt, and I thought, oh, that was close. I got off the ground, no big deal. I didn't realize that I'd actually cracked the end of my prop, split it a little bit at the end, so I was losing some thrust. So I'm flying around, and I go over to this other field, and I go try to climb up this hill, which is I've always enjoyed doing, is I get low and actually go up hills using the thrust of the motor, so I'm maybe 8 feet off the ground as I'm climbing up a hill. Okay. Well, not realizing that my prop, the damage to my prop, actually took some thrust away because the way it was transferring the air. And so I start climbing, and I'm like, whoa, 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 I'm getting close to the ground. So I pull down on my brakes to give myself a little bit of lift, but I still couldn't get enough throttle. So I turned to the right, hoping I could circle around. I couldn't, and I ended up landing in the field. Just kind of came down on my knees, and the wing went down. So anyway, I'm halfway up this hill, so now I unhook my wing, walk my wing up this hill, which is a huge, steep hill, get that set up. Then I have to bring my motor up, and I'm exhausted when I get to the top. The sun is already set, so I've got maybe about 15 minutes to get back home. And I'm a little bit worried. I'm like, if I can't get this wing off the ground, first of all, I don't have a nice area to launch from. It's literally sitting off the ground maybe a few feet because the grass is tall and there's some weeds and whatever. So, and then knowing my prop is now cracked, it put me in a position of, what am I going to do? What if I can't get this off the ground? What if I can't get enough thrust? Is it even safe to fly at this point? I wasn't sure. So I go for it. I'm like, well, I got one shot. I'm going to do it. If I can't, I'm going to have to figure out a way home. So I get the wing off the ground, and I couldn't get enough thrust to launch myself off the ground. Fortunately, I started running toward the downhill that I had previously crashed into. And as soon as I went downhill a little bit, I just lifted off the ground and I was able to get out of there. The whole way home, I stayed high and I kept a wide open space for me to land in case I started to have prop issues. That was one of those situations that I felt from that point on, and even now when I fly, it has taken away a little bit of confidence that I had prior to that. I feel like I'm just a little bit more apprehensive on some things, which is a good thing, because I think I was speeding up too quickly. And that was a situation where there was no injury outside of needing another prop, no significant damage or anything like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say by this is that our own individual progress will hopefully all get us to the point that we want to be at in the end, which I'll talk about that soon. But safety is the biggest thing. We all want to be able to get home to our families and enjoy the sport the next day. So keeping in mind that sometimes it's okay to wait to touch the ground. It's okay to wait on foot dragging. It's okay to be a little bit higher over some tree lines because of just in case type things. That's part of this whole process. That's the part that I've enjoyed, although it's been more expensive than I had thought it would probably be. Now, those are a couple of the downfalls that have happened just in the learning process, but there's been so many more positive things. For example, I had a motor out probably somewhere around 25 hours. So I'm flying up high near my home, motor goes out. And right away I'm thinking, okay, this is that test. Have I been paying attention? Have I done enough spot landings? Have I mastered this enough to get this to the ground safely? Now I had quite a ways to go, but I was up high enough where my glide ratio could easily get me there. So I swooped around over some of the neighbor properties and I slowly brought myself down to the point where I felt that was a safe altitude, and then I started going in for my landing, and guess what? It was one of the best landings I had without a motor out even. So what that did for me is it showed me that my spot landings are pretty good. So from that point on, every time I would come in for a landing, I'd get up really high, kill my motor, take the throttle, actually tuck it into my jacket, and just fly, just paraglide at that point. Coming in for those kind of landings, hearing the wind, sometimes I'd take my ear cups off so I could just listen to the wind blowing. It was so therapeutic, so amazing. So having that motor out forced me to realize that I could do this without it. I didn't need the motor to decide where I was going to land. I planned it out and I was able to successfully do it. Now, with all the valleys in my training, there's definitely been some mountains, some high points. And one of the high points is having that Spider 3 wing has given me a little bit more versatility in my skill development. And that includes the tip steering. Now, the wings that we trained on did not have tip steering. They were the Mojo basic wing. All the steering was done using brake inputs. The Spider and the Roadster and wings further down the line have the tip steering, which to me is the equivalent of steering a sport bike. When you apply that tip steer, the wing just really dives in. And to me, the combination of a tip steer and brake, the feeling of that control, I feel safer with the wing, to be honest. When I'm just applying brake pressure, I feel like there's so much resistance that is creating that drag that to me it seems counterintuitive. So I'm really happy I went with the wing that I went with. Now with the tip steering, you also have the option of tying into 2D steering. Now to me, this has been a huge game changer for me. I was a little hesitant at first, you know, of course my trainers back at Aviator warned me that I should have more hours before I do this, and you know, but the fact is I've been using the brake and the tip steer together basically all of my flying. So they were basically tied together just with my fingers versus tying a knot. The cool thing about going to 2D steering is the amount of control you have coming into a turn. So say I'm doing a dive, okay, I'm diving down to the right. When I'm pulling in on the tip and the brake, of course I have to adjust left and right based off of what more input I want. So I adjust right to have more brake. I come in, then I have more tip. So if coming down in the middle pulls them both, as long as I have it tied up correctly, it gives me the performance that I'm looking for. Now there's been some times when I come into a dive, okay, and I'm coming closer to the ground. And if I feel like I'm gonna get closer to the ground than I want to get, all I do is instead of pulling more tip, I move out and pull more brake. And that creates a little bit more drag and causes the wing to lift versus continuing to dive south. So it's really cool how that process works, and once you get that figured out, it gives you a lot more options while you're flying. Now another benefit to just practice and consistency is getting down lower. One of the things I was extremely excited about for flying was low flying. To me that seemed like the coolest thing, to be able to hover across the ground and get down and your feet are just a foot or two off of the ground or the cornstalk or whatever you're flying above. That is just a really thrilling thing to do, and then all of a sudden you just take off and you go up over the trees or whatever's in front of you and swoop down again. The more confidence you have, the more comfortable you are at that low altitude. Now I do get high once in a while. I think I've been up to maybe 3,000 feet, not much more than that. For some reason, and I don't have a fear of heights, but when I'm up high, I feel like I have less control or opportunity, even though technically I have more. If something was to happen up high, I have more time to make decisions, but my brain hasn't quite grasped that yet. I get higher and higher and then I'm a little bit more apprehensive. So maybe because the winds are typically a little different or something feels different with it, I'm not sure. But I will continue to move toward that as I progress in my training. Continuing on, I'd have to say one of the best things that come with practice and experience is being comfortable with changes in the wing. As I'm flying and a wind gust hits the wing, or I hit a thermal, or something that throws off that comfort with the wing. In the beginning, if that was to happen, heart rate would go up and I'd be like, whoa, and I'm like, oh, don't move, don't move. But as you learn to trust that wing and the fact that it is designed to handle situations like that, you know, I see people flying on YouTube all the time and they're all over with that wing. They're flying in conditions that I don't fly in, and the wing is doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm very confident that wing can handle far more than I am putting on it or expecting of it. But it takes a while to trust that, and that's, once you get over that, makes a world of difference in the enjoyment factor of flying. Alright, as with anything, we want to have goals. We want to start bringing ourselves up, elevating ourselves up from where we're currently at. Now, some people are consistent with their flying. They just basically want to get in there, tool around, and land each day, and that's perfectly fine too. For me, I want to not master the sport, but I definitely want to be comfortable enough where I can fly from pretty much anywhere. If I run into some gusty conditions, I can get the paramotor and wing down safely and myself. So I want to continue training. I figure at least I've got a full another year to accomplish some goals that I didn't feel quite comfortable with tackling in 2020. So for 2021, I want to get up in the Smoky Mountains, find a nice calm day and fly up in the mountain areas. It's so beautiful up there. I can see them at afar every time I fly. I definitely want a calm day, and I'll have to be able to increase my altitude because there aren't a lot of landing options up there. They're covered in trees. So I want to make sure I give myself plenty of opportunity in case I have a motor issue. But that is one of my goals for 2021. I also have a goal of getting out to more areas, just exploring, getting out of state, and just flying from foreign areas that will test me a little bit. I'm going to have to think more about the area around me and coming in for landings, things like that. I used to play golf at this golf course I worked at when I was in college, and I got free golf. So every day after work, I'd work from like 4 in the morning till 7. I'd go out and golf at that time. I got to be so good at playing golf at that particular course. But if I went to another course, I would fall back into basically my same level of skill, which wasn't that good. So what happens is if you fly enough from one spot, you will definitely build skills there. I want to push the envelope and get out and explore a little bit, push myself. Another area that's important to me is to try a foot drag for a longer period of time. I can come down and my foot will scrape and then I'm back up. Like I said, around here it's a little bit difficult because the ground is so hilly. But that's another goal of mine, is start building that skill of keeping good throttle control and being on board, ready for those brakes. Just enough brake input to kind of keep me at that level. I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping a couple guys from the class I took will join me for one of those advanced courses at some point, maybe 2022, I guess. That might be a good goal to be looking at for the following year. Now, one of the last things I want to tackle in this video is a big responsibility is understanding mechanics. When you buy a paramotor, you don't have a service station down the road to take your motor in for them to do maintenance to. You have to basically learn these things on your own. So I've had my carb off a couple times already. I had to clean it out. I swapped out some gaskets, pulling the airbox off. I had to replace my throttle. The kill switch stopped working. Replace the primer bulb, little things like that. And it's interesting, the more you work on it, the more, of course, familiar you get with it. So it's not as daunting to think, oh, I need to clean my carb again. But you have to take into consideration that that is going to fall on you. Unless you know somebody who works on two-stroke motors and you trust them to work on it. But it's probably something you're going to want to tackle yourself. And it's good. You know the machine, you put your heart and your energy into it, so you know it's running good. It makes a big difference. Now, to close out, basically spending almost a year doing this, I've developed a really good understanding of what's kind of expected of a paramotor pilot. And we all have different skill levels. Some of us will pick up on this sport and take off very quickly. Some of us take a little bit more time. There's still hesitancies. And it comes down to what you're wanting out of the sport as well. But there's three things that I find to be very important in becoming a successful paramotor pilot. One is knowledge. Knowledge is a key for most things in life, right? The more we know, the more capable we are. The second is respect. We have to respect the sport. We have to respect what the rules are. We respect other pilots in the sky with us. We have to respect the people on the ground below us. Fly within those parameters that keep everybody else safe, right? The last thing you want to do is make a mistake and have this 100-pound paramotor falling from the earth and landing on somebody, right? So we make good choices so that we can minimize risk and keep the sport open to all of us. The last one is appreciation. And I try to keep this door open in many aspects of my life, being appreciative for what I have, for what I've obtained in my life, for my children, for my friends and family. The things that I have, I know many parts of the world and people within this world do not have anything close to that. So being appreciative for the fact that I get to fly this thing, that I get to go up and explore and push myself and come down low and swoop in like a bird. I was telling my girlfriend one of the things early on is that when I'm flying above flying birds, it's such a surreal feeling. I'm looking down at birds flying. And you might say, well, if you're on an airplane, you might look down and see birds flying. But when there's nothing between me and those birds. I'm looking at them. They're right below me. It's not like I'm looking out a window of an airplane. And understanding that connection is just, it's surreal. And we have to appreciate that. And I appreciate that I'm okay, that I'm healthy enough to do the things that I can do. And appreciation is one of those things that the little bit you give, you get huge returns from it. You give a little bit more, the returns come back multiplied. So appreciate the sport. If this is something you're into or getting into, appreciate every moment you have, even the frustrating moments, which aren't always easy to appreciate. Alright guys and girls, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully it had some value for you, or sometimes it's just nice hearing the words of another paramotor pilot. I've watched plenty of people on YouTube. There's a lot of good information out there. 2020 is almost over. I wish you guys an amazing Christmas. Happy New Year. 2021 is going to be an extraordinary year for everybody, for all of us. All right. Let's think optimistically. Let's make some good choices. Let's love one another and respect and appreciate our life. You guys take care.